Thanks so much for being with us here on another edition of Austin Fit Talks. Happy to be joined today by Mark Garza, Executive Director of the Flatwater Foundation. Mark, thanks for making some time for us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I want to get into a lot of the stuff you guys have going on, but just for people who may not be familiar, can you give us just a quick overview of what the Flatwater Foundation is and what your mission is?
I'd love to do that. Thank you. Yes. So Flatwater Foundation is a nonprofit founded here in Austin, Texas. And we are focused on providing access to mental health support for families that have been touched by a cancer diagnosis. And what that means, to me, creating access is covering 100% of the cost of that care for families that on their own wouldn't be able to afford to get it. And it's because of how cancer has affected their lives. Just a huge gap in that part of the cancer care. It started 10 years ago. And it's called Flatwater because our mission is to bring families back to what we call the serenity of kind of calm, flat water.
Seems like, so many of these charities start because of a personal connection, and that was the case for you. Can you walk us through a little bit your inspiration and your decision to start the organization?
That's exactly it, Ricky. You see it. It's very common that somebody goes through something in a charitable sort of act or an event or something springs up out of it, and the true dedication or the mission and the cause formulates into a nonprofit or a charitable entity. And so that's what happened. I went through this. It was 2009. I found out about my father's diagnosis, his terminal cancer diagnosis. It was prostate cancer. And, had made it into my early 30s at that point, the youngest of 4 kids, and we'd had a lot of good news. But this comes along at a time, sort of hits us all in a way that we all had to figure out and struggle. And I saw, through my own experience, I kind of saw what happens with my dad, who is diagnosed, and now he handles the mental aspect of this, but then separation from my mother, his partner, 47 years. I saw separation and divorce. I saw brothers and sisters struggling very hard to cope with what was happening, and really the ripple effect of one diagnosis and how it just kind of booms and explodes through a community, through a family, and how many people can be affected by one diagnosis. So it was hard, and I tried to figure it out, and saw people in my family going in all directions. But through my own journey, getting on a paddleboard, strangely, in 2009, 2010, paddleboarding wasn't something that was even really had arrived on the scene, especially not what it is now. And I started to take care of my mental health, accidentally meditate, get out on the water, and had already believed that water was so healing, but knew that something was missing, and it was getting that professional help. But it was so hard to get. So the moment I myself struggled through trying to find help and figure out what LPC and LCSW, what the acronyms all were, and realized by the time I got to the point of care, it was going to be $140 an hour, which, to me, it's invaluable. It's worth thousands of dollars a minute. If you can get the care and the life-saving care that it represents. But I couldn't afford it. And I knew there had to be a better way. And I was doing fine, single at the time, good job, but just access to this mental health support for not just my father and my family, but also a son like myself was very difficult. And after I made it through with the therapist that told me, don't worry about the money, let me take care of, there's something about you, I need to work with you. That was my aha moment, that we needed to make this happen, and people didn't need to struggle to get therapy.
Maybe this is just my, me being naive, but, I think about a cancer diagnosis and my mind jumps to, getting the person the best care possible and making sure they're in the right spot and the money that comes along with that. And it's almost like you forget about, to your point, the family members and the siblings and the parents or whoever it may be. I mean, did you kind of find that was a gap and that wasn't, I don't know if readily available is the right word, but maybe overlooked?
Absolutely. Caregiving is something, survivorship and survivor's guilt, and a lot of it are going through it. A lot of these things that are overlooked, but the caregiver side of it, for example, my mother, or even children after a diagnosis. But the caregiving aspect was something that was so, and still is, can be very sort of passed by, because really we're only as strong as we can be and give the support that we want to give to those that need it by standing strong ourselves. And so people are falling down and struggling to get that help. So people ask all the time, does Flatwater just provide help for, for those with cancer, for the people that were diagnosed? And I remind people it was started by somebody whose dad was dying, and really saw sort of the whole community need, the whole familial sort of power of taking care of your mind. And so it is important that, a mother, a spouse, somebody that's there, be as strong and help be a rock. And also with the help of a professional, not for a husband or wife to be the therapist. Like I said about the value, the training, the expertise that a mental health professional can provide. It's just, I keep saying it, but it's just a life-saving asset and a tool.
Is it kind of crazy for you now, in your 10 plus years into this, to see what this has become? And I mean, for you, a career, a passion and everything, to see how it's grown?
It's funny. I have to remind people all the time, I am not a mental health professional. I mean, I've run an organization for over a decade now that provides access. We've done about $5.5 million worth of therapy in the Austin area that we've covered at no cost to these families. And I remember doing the application to the Secretary of State and trying to formulate, like, this was my aha moment. This was my purpose and my mission, and wanted to put 100 people in therapy over a long period of time. And how were we going to raise 5,000 here and 10,000 there? And it was stressful, but we got to the point pre-pandemic, right before the pandemic, we were doing 6 figures cash out the door. So about $120,000 a month, which is $240,000 worth of therapy, because we pay a 1/2 scale. We pay $70 for $140 per hour session. And just looking at what we've taken on, the staff, the volunteers, it is a monster. But we are only scratching the surface and doing what we need to do to get through this pandemic, making some hard business decisions. We got to run this like a business because we're here to take care of these families. But it is something that wouldn't be possible without a community like Austin, Texas, that thinks about the power of mind and body and how important that mind is, because they've really stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the pandemic. I know we've spoken with a few charities, and this is obviously something, well, not just in the charity world, everybody's battling with is kind of how to navigate their way through this. I mean, how difficult has it made it for you guys when so much money, I'm sure, comes in through large events and things of that sort to continue the mission?
Yeah, we've done if I may say, I feel like we've done a good job at building community around this cause. It's something that Chelsea Hardy, myself, our board, Chelsea being our development director and running all of our events, like Tyler's Damn That Cancer, we, even just one event, will build 20 community events that lead up to the big event just to get people together, because that unity is strength messages at the core of our values. So not being able to get together, not being able to have a big party and your typical fundraising events, but just beyond the events, I mean, the money aspect of it is big, but the community and sort of the fuel in the gas tank of getting everybody together and, pushing the mission on has been a creative challenge that we've had to overcome. And in addition to that, the sheer notion of June being our annual fundraiser that's become $1 million fundraiser wasn't able to go. It wasn't a go in June, and we knew that we were going to hit some creative adjustments and have to solve, which we did and were able to do. But it led us to make really hard decisions, like having to push pause on new placements of families into therapy. Ricky, we don't limit the duration that somebody or a family can go. So, we've got people that have been in for months or years, because the cancer doesn't go away and it comes back in different ways. And so to take on more and more of that financial, that liability, because we're going to pay it, we're going to take care of them, was something that we had to assess when the money stopped. It just wasn't something we could do. It wasn't something that anybody was digging deep for. In a time of uncertainty at the beginning of the pandemic, and it continues. So we're really just sticking to fundamentals and trying to stay strong and our core group and do the fundraising, like I said, in ways that make sense, that aren't tone deaf, and keep the mission alive.
Is it difficult to get that message out there to people that, you may not be seeing us physically, but we're still here. Our families still need your support. We still need the mission continues, so to speak.
Right. We had to make hard decisions with our board and our marketing committee and with professionals sort of in that marketing field that were very, very quick to take a pause, to take a breath, to be okay not hammering out the community. But it was really sort of a process or a piece of the process that we had to trust in our historical efforts, the community that we had built, have some faith and trust in sort of that bond through truth and hard work in the community that I spoke about. We had to believe that we had fostered enough engagement and momentum, but not rest on it, not know that like we don't have to do anything. So we did take a pause. We did let everybody sort of breathe, because this was, ironically, this was all about mental health, what we were doing, and everybody's mental health was just taking a blasting, right?
So true, yeah.
Yeah, and so we had to go, I wouldn't say go dark, but the closest thing that we could consider sort of letting things and people sort of find their own ways in a selfish manner, in a non-selfish manner. We had to let people get down to their core. But we as an organization knew that we also have a responsibility to the families that are already in care and the families that continue to get diagnosed, that can't go get care, families that couldn't get follow-up care because the cancer centers weren't allowing patients, or family members or visits, or putting stuff off. And it's just exacerbated the need for what we do. We heard that patients the doctors were no longer getting a lot of stage 1 and stage 2 as people were coming in much later. They were putting off the care or the signs or what was going on. And so you think about it, and that brings our role as an organization that needs to help these people through the diagnosis on the mental side much larger. So it was very difficult. But we've kind of sort of found a stride of a way to come out, a way to put our event on as a non-event, but allow people to fundraise and take steps to get us closer.
What's the best part of this for you? The most rewarding part when you're, doing your daily work? Is there something that really resonates with you?
I would say we get letters in the mail more often than I ever thought that I would see, like a card or a snail mail from a family. But we also get emails and digital correspondence. But it's the people that come forward with a testimonial about how it's affected their life and how it's changed their life, the care that they've gotten. It's all anonymous, Ricky. I don't know who's going in, who's in care, who's coming through. We work with partners in HIPAA compliant manner. I'm just working very hard with our team to raise the money that we need to pay for the care. But sure. I'm not, like I said, the intake specialist or the social worker. And so it's those little reminders that this is crucial and that we are saving lives, because we hear it directly from the people that are in care that decide, I'd like to share my story. We've had stories of a woman who passed away, and her daughter and mother were in Flatwater care with her. The mother was diagnosed with cancer, and her daughter and her mother were doing our equine therapy program, which is a smaller part of what we do, but a major impact on families. And they had their ceremony for her mother out on our facility at the equine center, and celebrated the life of the mother, and wanted Flatwater to know and told us their story, and said that the Flatwater care that they got made everything worth it for them. And it's the people that say, like, we got to that piece. I know what that's about, because my father was able to get to that piece before he passed. And so it isn't always a wonderful outcome, and people's time does run out, but we're just glad we can be there.
Yeah, that's got to be so rewarding. One thing I wanted to ask you about is it seems like right down to your signature event, but it seems like there's always been a strong tie between Flatwater and athletics and sports, from your ambassadors, from your mission, or excuse me, your event. How did that kind of come about? Is that just you, or how did that develop?
That's the cause. Think about it. You don't. I know you know, Ricky. We're an official partner of the Austin Marathon. You were the charity chaser years back. Where it
True.
comes from. Initially, the water aspect. My father would always preach to me the healing power of water. And so when I was struggling with him, and his diagnosis and his impending death, I did get on a paddleboard, and I found sort of my exercise on a paddleboard at 6 a.m. every morning. And that was sort of really illustrating the power of exercise and outdoors and connecting with the outdoors to help your mental state. It started there for me, but I realized it had been there my whole life. It was just a representation and a realization. We didn't ever want to be a paddleboarding organization. It was never in our mission and our goal and our value that like paddleboarding would be what we do. But I took that before Flatwater existed. I took it as a stunt and got 12 or 13 people to go on paddle boards, because people would be like, what is that? Those guys are walking on water. What's happening?
Right.
Get on the news and tell people the power of the mind, the importance of taking care of your mind, not just cancer, just mental health, and do some work on the stigma. And it worked. But really we knew moving forward that Austin was the perfect city to correlate the power of the mind, movement, health, and well-being, because all of us know so many people, including a lot of us, a lot of your listeners. Will, if you miss a workout or you miss a run, your head isn't in it. Mm-hmm. If you sleep through a workout or just the weather's bad, it compounds with the fact that you couldn't go for your run. And so we really knew we needed to get that message out. We needed to work from day one with guys like Trey Hardy. Trey was year one. He was our global ambassador and still works with us today. His wife, Chelsea, is the other half of our staff of two. And it was taking people who use sport and using that as a message to really get deeper into the idea and aspect of mental health. Because a lot of people think, I don't have a therapist, or I don't have mental health problems, or you struggle mentally with everyday tasks in your life if we're not doing the right stuff to take care of our minds. And so we use sport and athletics to convey that message.
Yeah, no, I love that. The signature event, obviously the Tyler's Damn That Cancer. You mentioned you were kind of ahead of the paddleboarding trend. Now it's huge. You see it everywhere, but I mean, that event has just exploded. I mean, how cool is that to see? I know it didn't happen the way you would have liked this year, but in general, just what that has become.
We can chalk it up to a little bit of dumb luck. I'm totally okay with the fact that we took this sport that really wasn't something it was a coastal, it was stand-up paddleboard, it was surf, it was something that was getting to the rest of the country when we started. And in the 10 years since we've started this, the concessions on Lady Bird Lake and downtown, they've all, sold off a lot of their skulls and pulled in. It's just a way for people to crave that water time. It was a way to get on the water. And we're very fortunate that the rise of that sport was something that we could take and grow with us. It wasn't in the plan. It was just, I have to give that some credit to that. I will say we've worked very hard to create an event, like I said, that's a 4 or 5 month community building aspect. So it's not about the paddleboarding. It is about the workouts, the training, partnerships with our local gyms or happy hours or whatever it might be, to really build community. But we've looked at all ways to grow it, and people have been and stayed very excited about the aspect of being one of the very few people who've done 21 miles on Lake Austin on a paddleboard. So it's helped. And yeah.
It's gotta be hard, right? I mean, I've just done a little recreational paddleboarding and feel a little fatigued. 21 miles, it's gotta be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy, and we don't want it to be easy, but it's definitely we like when it's a little harder. It's something that when it's real easy in a couple of years, there's no wind or it's a little too easy, we enjoy it. And there's a lot of people that want to do it again, but we love the challenge. We call it feats of strength, from that to marathons to other partnered events. We like it to be a little bit hard and grueling and because the unity is strength message that was very hard in 2020 is something that really pushes people along. And most of these people would not want to do this by themselves, wouldn't be able to go it alone. And that's a good metaphor for us for the cancer journey.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned the marathons. I mean, you've got some pretty cool partnerships there, taking groups to what I think Berlin and in New York, and that's got to be a great experience for people. And of course, obviously a good way to raise money.
It has been great. Marathon, is something that a lot of people all over the world can get involved with the cause, because you just need a nice pair of shoes and some training and take care of your body, and it is mental.
Yeah.
It's mental. That's
True.
the thing about this is these are feats of strength, but mental strength, mental toughness and fortitude. And so we've been very lucky to have some great contacts. Chelsea Hardy, I mentioned, she's had some great contacts in the majors, with the majors globally, but not just that, with Jack Murray and his team locally, and getting involved early on in the Austin Marathon program for charity. It's a fun way to get people together. Again, the training aspect is something that people enjoy. And we've now completed, Berlin Marathon, the New York Marathon, the Austin Marathon. We've got the partnership in place with New York and Berlin, but we'd like to expand that across the majors to other places around the world. As we hopefully in due time, get back to what we'll see as our new normal. Globally.
I know, as you just alluded to, so much uncertainty, but what's next as you look into the future for the Flatwater Foundation? What do you hope is next?
Yeah, one thing I don't want to talk necessarily too much about just doom and gloom with the pandemic. I'd love to express there are some things that really hard times and pressure, some good strength can come of this. As an organization, we've got a network of around 140 therapists that we've been building and growing locally, that very quickly had to learn about telehealth and go online and build a practice or figure out how to do it so they could continue, not for Flatwater, but in their own businesses. We don't have a staff of therapists. We're providing access to therapists that we've vetted, pre-screened, visited their offices across Central Texas and the greater Austin area. Well, the pandemic has pushed them online, really upped the telemedicine game. So now we've got a very strong opportunity to double, triple our efforts to raise millions of dollars within a year, because with telemedicine, we can now access a greater population. We are still laser focused on our Central Texas, Austin, greater Austin community. But forward thinking, we can really hit the greater Austin area with a much stronger and efficient program if we can remove the geography of the challenge of driving for these patients, many of them sick, many of them challenged with vehicles or mobility. We can really provide a better product and allow them to see anybody in this network, regardless of where they are. So that's something that I think we are really going to figure out how we can do, and also how we can employ technology to strengthen our efficiencies as we deliver care.
That's the interesting thing about COVID, right? I mean, it's, of course, as difficult and frustrating as it's been. And I do feel like there are some efficiencies that have been discovered and maybe some better ways of doing things.
Forced on us?
Yeah, forced on us. Right. But I mean, to your point, like, maybe we can embrace some of those things and find better ways to handle some things.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't look for a replacement and an alternative to human connection. And I think that's something we've heard for 50 years. Like, I think, I think in whatever degree, historically in modern American history, it's like, this will replace that. And I think what's important is that we complement and we look at efficiencies, but the technology aspect is a powerful one, and to use it for good is an opportunity that we all have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great, Mark. I know, I mean, I've gotten to know you a little bit personally, but I've respected and admired what you guys have done from afar for a long time. So, um, much respect to you. It's really a great thing what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. And likewise, Ricky, good to have you in our community, and the work you've done for our community has been impressive. Thank you for all the support you've given for local organizations.
Thanks, Mark. What's the best way for people to find out more if they want to learn more about Flatwater Foundation?
Absolutely. So we've kind of tried to keep our story through COVID alive at flatwaterfoundation.org. Our struggle, our need to make up quite a deficit through the year. And there's flatwaterfoundation.org/donate to see the different ways you can become a recurring donor or a one-time donor. But just learn more about the organization, and feel free to reach out to me at mark@flatwaterfoundation.org with any questions. But we try to have it all there at flatwaterfoundation.org to be nice and clear about how it works. And again, that's also on our socials at Flatwater on Instagram and Facebook.com/Save the Mines. We'll try to keep people informed about what's going on at all times.
Sounds good. Mark, thanks so much for making the time.
Appreciate it, Ricky.
Okay, and join us again here next week for another edition of Austin Fit Talks.